Cutting off hands of thieves and stoning adulterous men and women are both crimes that violate the human rights. The Sharia is much more than cutting off hands and punishments for crimes which are called the penal law or the criminal law. Sharia encompasses all aspects of life, social, political, economic, as well as criminal law. For example, this book is called the Sharia Standards, the IOFI Standards. IOFI stands for Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions. So this is the economic Sharia. In this book, it says that the Sharia doesn't allow two things: securitization and selling loans by loans. Those two things have led to a catastrophe during the past 3 years in your country, in Europe, and in the United States of America. More than 20 million people lost their jobs because of those two things. Securitization, which is something, a procedure that takes place in the stock market, and the Sharia is not allowing it, and selling loans by loans. So had you been following this, you could have avoided this recession and all those people who are now standing in lines to take food stamps. 10% of the American people are standing in lines every month to take food stamps because of the devils of the Wall Street and what they are doing with their money. The Sharia didn't allow that. And for the past 40 years, we were criticized, not criticized, we were laughed at. People were laughing at Muslims that, Muslims are crazy, Muslims are nuts, they are missing a lot of interest, they are missing a lot of gains because they are not participating in securitization and in selling loans by loans. But it proved that the word of God is the wisdom, is the real wisdom. Let's talk about cutting off hands. Well, for the first while, it may seem more brutal and harsher than jailing the person for 10, 15 years. But actually, if you think about a principle which exists in every constitution, it's called the principle of a personal punishment, that the punishment should only be or should only fall on the criminal, should only fall on the perpetrator. No one else should be punished except the criminal himself. Look at the burglar or the thief who's jailed for 15 years. What happens to his wife? She's widowed, but her husband is alive. His children are orphaned, but their father is alive. So here, this long sentence in jail is not actually punishing the criminal alone. It's a punishment for many people around him. I would like you to try to go and make this survey in any jail near you in Amsterdam, and go to those who are jailed for 10 to 15 years, and you ask them, without mentioning anything about Islam or Sharia or anything, just ask them, which one would you prefer? Do you prefer that you could have got your hand cut off 15 years ago at the day of the court and went back home with your wife to watch your children growing? Or do you prefer that you could have, spend 15 years in jail? And come back to me and tell me, what will they say? What is the percentage of those people who will choose cutting off their hands and going back with their families? Actually, there should be no place for guilt by association. The families are judged according to, or actually are also punished because they are guilty by association. But just by being a son or being a wife of a thief, they are also punished. Talking about stoning doesn't exist in the Quran. Stoning exists in the Bible, actually. And Prophet Muhammad applied stoning on two people. And that the source in this is Muslims do respect the Sharia of those before them, which is the Jewish Sharia, the Jewish legislation. But there is also an opinion of scholars that what exists in the Quran came to abrogate the Sharia of those before us, and since it was descended, it was not applied anymore. And the opinion today of many scholars is that those who commit adultery should be flogged 100 lashes on their backs, but not stoned. Those who are applying stoning, they are applying actually an opinion which do exist in the Sharia, but it's based on the Sharia of the Jews, the Sharia of the Christians, which is the Sharia of the Jews too. But many scholars today, they say no, it's abrogated by the verse of the Quran that says that the adulterer and the adulteress should be flogged 100 lashes on their backs. The last thing actually is Western human rights or Western universal human rights are copied or taken from the Islamic law. No, we are not claiming that Westerners copied from Islam. No doubt that Westerners have their own traditions, they have their own history, they have their own experience. And they came finally with a very beautiful outcome, which is the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. They just should not force it on other people who may have their own traditions and their own culture and their own history. With that, I end by thanking you again for allowing me to be your presenter today, and auf Wiedersehen.